It is the 27th of May, and on this day, African leaders are threatening to divorce the International Criminal Court to protest what they say is radical racial witch hunt.
And the leaders meeting under the auspices of the African Union have called for a total withdrawal or deferral of criminal charges against President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto.
The leaders meeting in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, claim the ICC process that has been conducted in Africa is lopsided. They claim that while the intention was to fight impunity, the ICC process has now been abused.
But even as those leaders took a stand on the criminal court, the challenge of a pullout remains the biggest headache, as experts warn that it is not that easy. Well, we'll have these details and more coming up shortly. This is KTN Prime. Welcome to the program, American Talker.
Many thanks for joining us. I'm Linda Goto. Let's take a look at the top stories tonight.
It is no use. ICC dismisses AU leaders' declaration.
The integrity nightmare, anti-graft team rejects Kimemia.
A time to eat, all set for MPs pay rise tomorrow.
And election scenes, why Jubilee and CORD are both guilty.
And tonight we begin in Addis Ababa, where African heads of state and governments have accused the ICC of engaging in what they call a racial witch hunt.
They have now dispatched an AU mission to tell the United Nations to prevail upon the International Criminal Court over the matter.
And as KTN's Noah Otieno reports, the African Union leaders minced no words at the end of the summit that has seen a candid criticism of the West for allegedly failing to give Africa space to find its own solution for her own problems.
This is the strongest language so far ever to come out of the African Union on the matter of the International Criminal Court's interventions in Africa. And the African Union leaders are saying that the ICC is engaging in racial discrimination in the manner in which it is prosecuting those suspected of crimes against humanity.
The intention was to avoid any kind of impunity and so ill governance and the crime. But now the process has degenerated into some kind of race hunting rather than an objective of taking care of those crimes and as well as impunities. So we object that.
ICC is not the court of first resort. It's actually the court of last resort. And now that Kenya has reformed its judiciary and they have now confidence in the judiciary in Kenya, things should be left to the country.
The AU heads of states and governments are saying that the ICC is being used to humiliate African leaders, and they are willing to pull all the stops to have this terminated.
Kenya has the capacity and the legitimacy to prosecute perpetrators of the most serious crimes, including the post-electoral violence. It is not in the interest of the ICC, the Security Council, the African continent, and relationships between the three to see further humiliation of African people and their leaders by an unfair criminal justice system.
If you take the example in Kenya, you know, the indictment has come because of the clashes between the two tribes, the Kalenjin and the Kikuyu. But these two clans, they came together and almost to say 100% elected the two president and the vice president. But ICC, what do the ICC need then? And the chasing of ICC of these presidents is not clear to the African leaders. And the African Union is mandated by the Assembly to take care of this issue, to present to the United Nations of the core of the matter.
This is not the first time that the United Nations is being petitioned on the matter of the ICC cases facing President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto. But this time round, the AU leaders are saying if they are not listened to, they are willing to use leverage against the international community to show that they are serious on what they are calling humiliation of African leaders. Now, Tino KTN at the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
All right, so the resolution is in, but how easy will it be for African countries to walk out of the Hague-based court? Let's listen in to Asha Mwilu.
The AU resolution on the Kenyan cases pending at the International Criminal Court has sent a resounding message across the globe. Even in the nondescript diplomatic language, the message is loud and clear to the ICC. However, the sun did not set without The Hague giving the African Union a piece of its own mind. Through this statement wired to KTN, the ICC underscores that AU resolutions or decisions are political, and that ICC is a judicial institution and doesn't take political matters into consideration when deciding on cases related to serious and grave crimes allegedly committed in Kenya. James Gondi, an international criminal law expert working with the African Center for Open Governance, agrees with this statement. He explains the intrigues of withdrawing from the Rome Statute.
If there was a process for withdrawal, which is a very lengthy and detailed process, it would be individual countries who would have to make that decision on their own and not the African Union as a bloc.
The indictment of sitting president is what I want this hall really to focus on.
They're asking, in particular on the Kenya case, that the case be reverted back to the Kenya courts, which obviously there's a new judiciary, there are a new constitution, and so there are new institutions that can actually take up this case.
This new wave of reasoning has, however, been termed as a complete turnaround by the AU, which in 2008 recommended that the Kenyan post-election violence be investigated by the ICC.
It's our political elites who referred us to the ICC. With regard to Uganda and other countries, the cases that they are facing before the ICC were referred by the governments themselves. So this is quite a contradiction.
Whether or not African states shot themselves in the foot by signing the Rome Statute, ICC is reminding the continent of the gravity of being signatories. The court says that 34 African states are parties to the Rome Statute. Parties have legal obligations under international criminal law to fully cooperate with the ICC. While the UN Security Council is able to defer ICC cases for up to 12 months, this deferral cannot be renewed indefinitely. The Security Council cannot order the court to drop a case. This means that the AU's quest to have the Kenyan cases deferred could be too big a bite to chew. Asha Mwilu, KTN, Nairobi.
So that story by Asha Mwilu leads us to our big question tonight, and we're asking you, do you think the ICC is unfairly targeting African leaders?
Send your yes or no response with a brief comment to the number 8040, and you can as well tweet us direct at KTN Kenya, at Eric Njoka KTN, and at Linda Ogutu, and give us your views. And during this live newscast and at the tail end of this live newscast, we'll be able to read your poll results.
Of course, it would be interesting to read some of your thoughts. Let's focus our attention on security matters now, and police have intensified investigations into the weekend attacks in Liboi, Garissa County that left 6 people dead.
Police claim the attacks were staged by Al-Shabaab remnants that have been fighting inside Somalia.
Right, these came as local leaders blamed the government for laxity in the war against crime in northeastern Kenya. Betty Chalo with the details.
According to Garissa Governor Hathif Jama, the attacks that left 6 people dead could have been averted if the Kenya-Somalia border was effectively guarded. The leaders say police presence in the region is still not enough, and there is urgent need to deploy more officers to man the border.
It's sad that, we can have such a huge battalion of armed foreigners can come into our country, ambao wana attack a whole town, na wanachukua watu, wana rep, wanafanya fujo, wanaua watu.
But contrary to the governor's concern, the Inspector General of Police, David Kimayo, asserts there are enough officers in the region who will now intensify patrols along the borders.
Normalcy has come back now because we have 50 of security in those areas. And again, we realized that the attack came from outside the country. Some of the remnants of Al-Shabaab
Kimayo, who spoke after holding a closed-door meeting with MPs drawn from northeastern Kenya, also told the press that the police has been in contact with the 2 officers who were allegedly abducted by the Al-Shabaab after Saturday's attacks.
I think for now, we are saying that we have only 2 officers that we were not been able to account for them. Either they are still in the country in the bush, looking for their way back, but they are still alive.
Meanwhile, in western Kenya, 4 people were hacked to death by unknown assailants in Muhoroni, Kisumu County. The 4 bodies that include 2 women and 2 men are said to have been found in a plantation having deep cuts and bands. Investigations into these murders have been launched. Betty Kialo, KTN.
Right, the fate of Secretary to the Cabinet nominee Francis Kimemia now lies with the Parliamentary Committee on Administration and National Security that has received a corruption dossier against Kimemia. The committee has begun compiling its report on Kimemia's nomination after the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission defended its dossier, which implicates Kimemia in corruption and abuse of office. Kimemia, who had been vetted by the committee on Friday, was interrogated for the 2nd time today. Rita Tinina has details of the story.
Just 2 days after being vetted by the Parliamentary Committee on Administration and National Security, Francis Kimemia was appearing before the committee yet again.
There were a few issues which we wanted clarified by Kimemia.
But this time he met the committee behind closed doors. Kimemia, President Uhuru Kenyatta's choice for secretary to the cabinet, appeared before the committee to defend himself moments after the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission Chief Executive Halake Dida told the committee why Kimemia should not be the secretary to the cabinet.
On the allegations that were contained in his letter, I think he gave us a very comprehensive brief. And after that, we met Mr. Kimemia to also respond.
The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission had earlier written to the committee opposing Kimemia's nomination over what it claims to be involvement in mega corruption and abuse of office. The commission is said to be investigating Kimemia over several corruption-related cases.
We need to ventilate, look at each and every paper, whether it's genuine, whether it's under oath, and then we now come up with a full report.
During vetting on Friday, Kimemia denied allegations of corruption, political bias and nepotism. The Parliamentary Committee on Administration and National Security has now retreated to compile its report, which is expected to be tabled in Parliament on Tuesday afternoon.
We will have everything in the report.
Former head of civil service Francis Kimemia is among the most powerful civil servants in the country. But with the anti-corruption watchdog poking holes into his integrity record, his fate now in the hands of Parliament hangs in the balance, and it may not be a smooth ride for Kimemia. Rita Tinina, KTN.
Away from Kimemia's vetting to an issue that I'm sure will make heads roll tomorrow in Parliament. And members of Parliament will tomorrow stage the final onslaught in the push for a higher pay as they debate a report seeking to degazette a notice that reduced their salaries. The members of Parliament are widely expected to debate and pass the motion that will render the SRM-led team attempts to slash MP salaries futile. KTN's Aaron Ochieng now reports.
Request by members of Parliament to increase their salaries will go a notch higher Tuesday afternoon. The first business on the order paper will be debate on a report from the Committee on Delegated Legislation seeking to nullify 3 gazette notices by the Salaries and Remuneration Commission on their salaries and allowances. The MPs argue that the SRM-led commission blundered in gazetting a notice to reduce the MPs' salaries without consulting Parliament. The Gazette notice reduced MP salaries from 850,000 Kenya shillings per month to 532,500 shillings per month. The notice also recommended an annual increment of 44,300 shillings. MPs argue that the Constitution confers powers to SRC to review and set salaries for state officers, but Parliament is mandated to pass laws that provide the process through which the SRC mandate is executed.
Under the prevailing circumstances of no revenue collection, natural disasters, the level of poverty index, which we all know, where so many are earning below less than 100 shillings per day, this is not the time for upward review of remuneration and benefits for any public servant.
According to the MP's plan, the Parliamentary Service Commission will embark on preparing the salaries of MPs, backdating to 3 months once the Gazette notice is quashed. MPs have not been paid since they were sworn in. The move will make the MPs' salaries go back to what MPs in the 10th Parliament earned, something that has been opposed by a cross-section of Kenyans. That even led protests outside Parliament.
Once we start hitting our double-digit growth, once our people have jobs, once our country grows, we will be able to pay them at that time 10 times, but not now.
We have an economy to run, and this economy must move. So we must be very careful when we are loading the current expenditure.
MPs had earlier threatened to disband the salaries team in totality. Aaron Ochieng, KTN.
You're watching KTN. Thank you so much for staying with us. Let's focus your attention on the breaking news that is crawling at the bottom end of your screen, news that we're just getting here at KTN, and that is coming out of Busia County. A vicious gunfight is reported to be going on in Bosijo village, that is in Funyula constituency at this hour.
Remember, this is information that we're getting to a newsroom at this moment, and the area member of parliament, Dr. Paul Otuoma, says gangsters have surrounded villages and screams can't be heard from several houses. Police are said to be rushing to the area, but it is not yet clear who is behind that attack.
All right, if you have been following this story and the issue of insecurity in the country, you will recall that the region has over the last few weeks experienced vicious attacks in which several people have either been killed or injured. Of course, we are keeping an eye on this story for you, and as soon as we get more information, we will relay it to you. Once again, breaking news getting to KTN is that a vicious gunfight is reported to be going on in Busijo village, that is in Funyula constituency. Area member of parliament Paul Otuoma understandably says that gangsters have surrounded villages, and what we know at this moment is that screams can be heard from several houses. Police are said to be rushing to the area, and it is not yet clear who is behind this attack. The information that you're getting is scanty, but as soon as we get more information, of course, we will let you know what's going on down there.
You are indeed watching KTN Prime, the latest for all the updates that we'll get in Busia County and other counties. Will update you on that. Even that breaking news that we're having there, will be updating you as this bulletin goes on. Let's just move on with other stories of the day.
Indeed. And public institutions spent 26 million shillings in congratulatory messages when the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission announced President Uhuru Kenyatta as the winner of the March 4th general election.
These millions of taxpayers' money, according to the Ombudsman, was money that could have been channeled to development projects that could have benefited more Kenyans.
The Ombudsman advised the Auditor General to counter-check needless expenditure by public institutions and the use of public resources during campaign seasons.
The Office of the Ombudsman claims that government resources were used by President Uhuru Kenyatta's Jubilee Alliance, Raila Odinga's CORD, Musalia Mudavidi's Amani Coalition and Peter Kenneth's Eagle Alliance in the run-up to the March 4th election.
And in respect of that, we found that in some instances, government GK vehicles were being used, but then the plates were changed so that what was on the number plate is a private plate. But inevitably, either on the windows or the side mirrors, then it still retained the GK number plates.
The Commission found that there were 15 vehicles in total assigned to various ministries and departments across the country that were found. Among these were vehicles belonging to the Office of the President, Office of the Prime Minister, Office of the Vice President, the Ministry of Planning and National Development and Vision 2030, East African Community and the Regional Development Authority.
We have also recommended that for the 15 vehicles that were identified, those who are responsible should be charged by the DPP or surcharged by the Auditor General's office.
Apart from using state resources before the election, the Commission on Administrative Justice claims that at least 26 million shillings of the taxpayers' money was spent on congratulatory messages printed on newspapers and aired on national television.
The report captures 70 public institutions who were all involved.
The Office of the Ombudsman also claims that there were incidences of vote buying and tallying irregularities, especially in Joro constituency, and recommended that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commissioners, clerks and agents be re-evaluated to ensure impartiality during elections of any kind. Catherine Omwando, KTN.
Let's just remind you of the breaking news that we are getting into our newsroom here, and it's coming from Busia County, where a vicious gunfight is being reported there to be ongoing in Busijo village in Funyula constituency at this hour. This is information as well we've gotten from the area member of parliament, Paulo Tuoma, who says gangsters have surrounded villages and screams can be heard from several houses, and police are said to be rushing to the area, but it is not yet clear who is behind the gunfire.
Breaking news there coming from Busia County, and to be specific, that is Funyula constituency. If you come anywhere close to that area, please tweet us at KTN Kenya. Let us know what's going on down there. Let us know if you have received help. Let us know what's going on. As we understand right now, there are screams that can be heard from the villages that we understand the gang has now surrounded. Police are heading there. We're not yet sure if they're there already. The information that we have is that scanty, but you're following it up for you. As soon as we have it, of course, we will let you know.
Information is paramount, and we appreciate if you share what you see with us. And before we take a break, let's remind you the big question of tonight's big question, actually. Do you think the ICC is unfairly targeting African leaders?
Let us know your opinion. Send your yes or no response with, of course, a brief comment to the number 8040 or Eric at Eric Njoka KTN or at Lindo Gutu. And, of course, we will sample some of your views just at the tail end of this bulletin. You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us this far. We are taking a short break for now.
And up next is business.
Just ahead on KTN Business today, Kenya Power has been put on the spot, and the ministry is now recommending an audit as a result of inefficiency. Also to come on tonight's bulletin, farmers from the North Rift region are asking for more money to be allocated on this year's fiscal budget. Join me, Joy Doreen Bira, on this edition of KTN Business Today.
Thank you very much for staying with KTN Prime. Welcome back to the program.
Now, the National Land Commission is demanding to be housed at Ardhi House so as to undertake what they term crucial roles in implementing their mandate.
The Commission revealed this today while meeting the Departmental Committee on Lands, where they defended their functions that were previously performed by the Ministry of Lands last Friday.
The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Lands is said to have evicted one of the land commissioners from Ardhi House offices.
The Commission now wants official communication on where they are supposed to operate from, saying that they need to be based at Ardhi House as well as to be allocated funds by Parliament as per their budget, which amounts to 4.45 billion shillings.
Elsewhere, two senior police officers attached to Dandora Police Station were today arraigned in court to answer to charges of murdering their fellow police officer Jackson Kiprop.
Corporal Daniel Gashuku Ngoge and Edward Bagretuni are accused that on 2nd August last year at Umoja in a Gesa bar, murdered Jackson Kiprop, who was attached to Buruburu Police Station.
The two officers are said to have mistaken Kiprop for a gangster and later found out that he was a police officer when they found him in possession of a Seska pistol.
The two denied the charges before Lady Justice Rosemary Korir and were remanded in custody pending their application for bail, that is tomorrow.
You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us. Just before we remind you of our big question tonight, let's run some news that we're just getting into our news desk, and that is coming from Busia County, and a vicious gunfight is currently reported to be going on in Busijo village in Funyula constituency at this hour. What we are getting from the area member of parliament, that is Paul Otuoma, gangsters have surrounded villages and screams can be heard coming from several houses. We understand that the police are rushing to the area to try and see what's going on. If you're anywhere near that region, please tweet us at KTN Kenya. Let us know what's going on, even as we try to figure out how far the police have gotten.
That's right, and information, remember, is paramount. Let's just remind you of the big question tonight, and we had asked you, do you think the ICC is unfairly targeting African leaders? Well, you can send your SMSs and comments, the number 8040. We'll sample them at the tail end of this live newscast. You're indeed watching KTN Prime, and just ahead.
Safaricom Business. Do you need a website for your business? Zidisha Biashara is the solution you need today. To learn more, contact Safaricom Business on partnerships@safaricom.co.ke.
You're watching KTN. It's just the start of the week. My name is Joy Dorin-Bira. And well, before we can do business, let's just get you up to date with what's happening in Busia. And the provincial commissioner, that is James Ole Serian, actually says that there was a gang of robbers and police are pursuing them. And they, of course, they're asking people in Busia and in the affected area to actually stay indoors, and they're actually saying that there were gunshots in that area and there were robbers in the area who tried to attack one of the villagers, and the villagers are being asked to stay indoors in the meantime as police does pursue these robbers. Well, now let's take a look at business. And Kenya Power is on the spot over inefficiency and is set to be audited, according to Cabinet Secretary in charge of Energy and Petroleum, Davis Churcher. The audit is expected to identify wastages and leakages within the firm to increase its operational efficiency in a bid to bring the cost of power down. Michael Karanja kicks off tonight's business.
Addressing his first press conference, Davis Churcher, the Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum, put the utility firm on the spot. According to him, the ministry will in the next 1 month be able to determine whether Kenya Power is justified to increase its basic tariff, as well as the cost of connecting new customers to the power grid. Kenya Power has been pushing for an increase in power tariffs, citing the need to raise additional capital to finance its operations. That plea has now been rejected by the government, arguing the company needs to sort out its structural inefficiencies.
My area of priority will be to make sure that we do generate power for the right cost, we do transmit power for the right cost, and we'll be looking at detailed unit costings so that we don't transport unnecessary cost or costs on wastage, which we incur as a company across the sectoral area, KPLC, Kentraco, or Kengen, to the end user.
This has, however, not gone well with Kenya Power, that has reportedly threatened to stop connecting new power customers as it cannot meet the cost. Kenya Power wants to double the connection charges to 70,000 shillings from 35,000 shillings, but this too has been put under review. The utility firm has in the recent weeks been on the spotlight, most of it connected to service delivery. This has not escaped the 11th Parliament, with a motion seeking to end Kenya Power's monopoly already lined up. Michael Karanja, KTN Business Today.
Thanks, Michael. Now, local leaders in the North Rift region have faulted the national government for not allocating enough funds for agricultural projects in its budget for the next fiscal year. The leaders, led by Uasin Gishu County Governor Jackson Mandago, said it was unfitting for the government to allocate 15.2 billion for irrigation while they cannot support farmers to exhaust rain-fed agriculture. Now, the agriculture through the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, estimated 38.9 billion budget for the next financial year, in which irrigation will take up 15.2 billion shillings. The leaders spoke during a farmers' consultative meeting held in Eldoret Town.
Serikali inataka kuweka 15 billion, karibu 50% ya budget kwa irrigation. Sasa tuende tuweke pesa kununua pipes, Na tunawaza kwanza hapa kuna watu wanafaa kushughulikiwa, kuna rain fed agriculture which will be cheap for the time being. Na tunakosa pesa ya kununua ile mahindi iko tayari.
And we are also wondering why irrigation was allocated 15 billion while the rain fed agriculture is left with a very small amount, and there are so many needs in this particular area. So these are the issues which must be addressed adequately, and I'm sure the farmer, no thrift, for instance, is able to feed the entire nation. As they have always said, this is an area which is the grain basket of the nation.
The demand for data storage in Kenya is set to increase with the launch of a data bank. East African Data Handlers says it will be targeting businesses in the region with a need to back up their data as part of business continuity. Across the globe, forensic data storage capacity has grown from 5 MBs in 1956 to 2.7 zettabytes currently, and this simply means that more and more businesses have embraced data storage as opposed to hard copy or paper storage.
Initially, we had about 5 terabytes of data when we started off. Right now, it's growing by about 40 terabytes of data every month. And we are hoping to grow to about 100 TB of data every month.
Just like those with bank accounts deposit their cash in banks and withdraw it at will, online data backup allows those with data banked at the East Africa Data Handlers Data Center to be able to deposit, modify, and store data of unlimited capacity at an annual payment depending on the data deposited online.
For instance, we only need my documents. We don't need my pictures at the moment right now. So if we're doing a restore, it will be prudent to just download the documents that we need currently, then restore the other ones we need at a later point.
This is meant to relieve businesses of oceans of data and store it in a secure data center encrypted by business owners. Currently, Kenya ranks the 5th country in Africa in data usage, with a large number being small and medium enterprises. And well, if you want to avoid data loss or accidental deletion of data, you should adopt the data bank.
On KTN Sports today, we tell you the progress of Harambee Stars, who will be welcoming the Super Eagles here in the country, and of course more concerning the NOC elections coming this week and many others. All that on KTN Sports today.
This statement and resolution by the African Union appears to be a pact amongst political elites who have interests in staying in power and who have certain interests in maintaining the status quo with regard to impunity, because impunity works for them. And the ICC is a threat to the status quo.
KTN Sports Today, in association with Guinness.
He believes a man's name finds its meaning not in what he says, but in what he does. A name that is made of more.
All right, now time for KTN Sports Today. I am Nicholas Mudimba. Harambee Stars coach Adel Amruche has allayed fears the absence of Dennis Oliech in the Kenya's match against Nigeria in Nairobi next week will spell doom for the team. Amruche, who had 11 players to train at the City Stadium today, was supported by Francis Kahata and Kefa Swani, who committed themselves to work extra hard to ensure the Star Males and Super Eagles wins.
With each passing day, the responsibility on the shoulders of the national team Harambee Stars continue to be heavier. Heavier in the sense that, other than the impressive 1-1 draw against Nigeria in Calabar last month, a lot more is needed from the boots of these players and their team of coaches. Their morale was further boosted by announcement by FKF that the players' daily allowances have been increased from 3,000 shillings to 10,000 shillings per day. A gesture that did not move coach Adel Amruche, who insisted that authorities should stop reacting. He, however, remains optimistic that Kenya can better Calabar's performance.
This is what we want. Make happy now. The first, make happy the people, because now all the Kenya people start to believe for this team.
But more pressure will be on Francis Kahata, the scorer of the memorable goal against the African champions. But he, like Kefa Aswani, who appears to be suspended Dennis Oliech's replacement, is not under any illusion.
Sina pressure yote juu najua ni kazi yangu lazima nitafanya. Nimekuwa nikicheza, nimekuwa nikifunga. So kwa sasa hii ni chance nyingine nimepata, of which ningependa kuiwakia hard.
Lazima tutakuwa na expect as in improvement kubwa kutoka kwetu. Hasa sana kwangu because as in hiyo game nimekuja kufungia Kenya na free kick.
KPL has rescheduled Premier League match between Gor Mahia and Tusker FC to allow the national team, which is set to move its training to Naivasha humble training time. Joshua Kimboy, KTN Sports Today.
And of course, the local players might as well surprise the Super Eagles. To tennis matters now. All the seeded players advanced to the second round of the Real Insurance Kenya Open Tennis Championships at the Nairobi Club. Kenya's Mohammed Fazal Khan, who is seeded 7th, upset 4th seed Mugabe Duncan of Uganda in a 6-love, 6-1 scoreline. 5th seed Habiambere Diutone from Rwanda eliminated fellow Rwandese Uwezimana Matthew 6-2 and 6-1. John Rugoi could not withstand Kevin Cheriot's firepower as the latter silenced him 6-4 and 6-3. In the girls' matches, Zipporah Jiko stopped compatriot Mero Ashira 6-love and 6-2 to qualify for the next round. Women's 5th seed Athumani Rehema from Tanzania lost to 6th seed Veronica Osoro 6-love and 6-love. Gor Mahia fans returning from Western Kenya, where the club was playing a Premier League match yesterday, were robbed of their belongings after the vehicle was commanded by suspected carjackers in Mau Summit area. The fans, numbering about 46, was claimed their driver was stopped at a roadblock and were driven to the middle of a forest where they were relieved of their belongings. But what shocked the fans was that the driver of the minibus was spared the ordeal. The driver later claimed that the carjackers made away with the car keys but managed to hide some money, which he later handed over to the passengers to use as bus fare back to Nairobi. The minibus was not the unlucky one in the night, as the carjackers had taken hostage passengers in another passenger vehicle belonging to an online company.
Na kutoa ID, pesa, na kunyang'anya sisi viatu na nguo na kutupika.
Nika load block wakanisimamisha. Nikisimama nikifikiria ni askari, naongea na yeye, akakuja akazima gari, akanisongeza mbele na akaanza kuendesha gari. Wakati alianza kuendesha gari ndio nilimuuliza ni nini. Akaniambia utajulia mbele. Waitana kopulo fulani wakitunyang'anya.
Too sad for the fans there. The National Olympics Committee of Kenya has announced that it renewed its sponsorship deal with sports apparel manufacturer Nike for another 4 years. Committee Chairman Kipchoge Keino, who will seek re-election for another term during Wednesday's election, said in Nairobi today that NOC seeks to start programs that will ensure Kenya's strong presence in the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. The election set for this week is not likely to change the face of the current block of management, save for Francis Paul, who remains unopposed. The other incumbents have been proposed for election. Two of the committee's members, John Roberts and Peter Nderitu, will not seek re-election. FKF Chairman Sam Nyamoya has been proposed for the position of second vice chairman. AK's Isaac Kiplagat will be vying for the position of first chairman, together with the Swimming Federation Chair Ben Ekumbo.
We will be having the coming election on 29. Members have come up for a position of the National Olympic Committee. All the assistance from Nike this time is very high. We had a long discussion that we have a lot of federation coming in who have youths in the grassroots, they don't get anything. But now and the days to come, we will be thinking of the youth of this country to get equipment.
I told my president, since you have shown an interest, I'm going to stand down and I support you in Olympic committee. That's what I did on my own, not that I was forced by anybody.
All right, that's all for KTN Sports Today. I'm Nicholas Mudimba. Have yourself a good night.
You're watching KTN Prime. Thank you so much for staying with us this far. You remember at the beginning of this bulletin, we brought you some breaking news coming in from Busia County. And what we had then is that a vicious gunfight was reported to be going on in Busija village in Funyula constituency. And what we were getting from the area member of parliament, that is Paul Otuomo, that gangsters had surrounded villages and screams could be heard coming from those villages. And at that point, police were trying to pursue the gangsters and try to find out what's going on. We have some update for you from Busia County, and that update is coming from the Western Provincial Commissioner, that is James Oleserian. What he tells KTN is that robbers had tried to attack a businessman at about 7:30 p.m. that is this evening. That businessman was not injured, and what we now know is that Seoport police officers are in pursuit of that gang. But what the PC is now urging the villagers is that they stay indoors because the gangsters are still being pursued. No, they do not want civilians to get injured in this pursuit. So if you're anywhere in Busia, that is Funyula constituency, please stay indoors as the police try to figure out which direction these gangsters have taken. Once again, that breaking news coming from Busia County. We understand that a gang of robbers had tried to rob a businessman. Police are in pursuit. That is the little that we know so far, coming of course from the Western PC, James Oleserian.
And remember, information is paramount and is key. So if you have anything happening in your county, we've actually started a hashtag, Police My County. Tell us at KTN Kenya what is happening in your county, and we'll inform the rest of the Kenyans. They need to know. All right, tonight we had asked you, do you think the ICC is unfairly targeting African leaders? Do you think the ICC is unfairly targeting African leaders? I'll just read a few of your Facebook messages here on our Facebook page, KTN Kenya. No, the ICC is a neutral arbiter, non-partisan and independent. It does not target Africa unfairly in any case. In the Kenyan case, did ICC summon Kenya or did Kenya summon ICC? That is Cas Obiero.
Right, Steve tweets and says Kenya's judiciary isn't better than ICC. AU leaders opting for second-hand justice because they know they're also guilty with similar crimes. Those are your opinions on our big question tonight. Thank you so much for writing in, for being part of KTN Prime. I'm Linda Ogutu.
And I'm Eric Njoka. Do have a good night. See you tomorrow.